On.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Filterless Podcast. And today we've got a special episode with Dr. KK. Say hi, Dr. KK.
Greetings, everyone.
And we've got a guest in the house, Keli Rabon.
Rabon,
there we go. I knew she told me she was going to correct me right when I did it, and she did. We knew that was about to happen. So, Keli, we're going to jump right into it. Welcome to the podcast. Happy you're here. Happy we finally got you. We were going to do it last Monday, but we had an out of town. We had an expected out of town with Scott being out of town, but we didn't let you know that. So we are sorry about that, but we are here. Keli, you've had a very interesting life. I'll give you a little bit of your background, and then you can fill in the parts. You have a bachelor's in communication from Texas Lutheran. You were an investigative journalist for 12 years. Was all of that here in Houston, pretty much?
All over the country.
All over the country.
Yeah.
And now it says that you are a stay-at-home mom with passions in fashion, home, and family. And you are mom to Braden and Barack. The main question that I have is, before we get into this, it says you want to be a wannabe DJ. What's that all about?
I am very passionate about music. I feel like whenever I have an audience, or even if it's just myself, I am definitely controlling the music vibes, no doubt. But I love to go to a rave. I'm telling you, people would not expect that from me. But let me tell you, I'm a little raver. I am up at the front. I am jamming. I'm always trying to connect with the DJs before the shows.
I like that.
I may or may not have tried to slip into the bus a few times after some major DJs have been around unsuccessfully. But, I have a big passion for music.
Well, we would love to talk to you about all that stuff, including some influencer stuff that you've got going on, because you have just created an awesome page for yourself, and I was on it earlier today, and I love all the stuff that you're doing. Since I'm in the furniture business, all of that stuff is like furniture porn to me, so I love it. And you've got a lot going on in your life. We're going to get into all that. The first thing that we kind of want to touch on is, unless you have something else that you want to go over in your past that adds to this long list of resumes that you have here. But I would like to just jump in, if everybody's okay with it, with the journalist stuff, because I feel like, especially what's going on right now in our society, you kind of have a background and some back influence or some past experiences that you can speak to a lot of the stuff that's going on in front of us, and maybe more of a backdoor kind of way, to where you were able to see the insides and outsides of some of this stuff. So I'd like to just jump into it, and would you mind just giving us your quick 5-minute highlight of kind of your career, and then what led to the last part of your journalist career and how that all went? And then, if you don't mind me, we could just ask you a few questions about it.
Absolutely.
Cool.
I feel like you can definitely hear journalist Keli turn on as soon as we start talking about TV, because it was such, and still is, a major passion in my life. So I started interning when I was in college in San Antonio, and it was like they couldn't even kick me out. I wasn't even earning credits anymore, but I just wanted to keep learning. I got my first job in Pascagoula, Mississippi, shortly after Hurricane Katrina. And so it's like when everyone else was leaving the area, I was crazy enough to go and jump in to the area that had been decimated by Katrina. It was hard to even find somewhere to live. And so I was a one-man band, and that means that you're shooting your own video, you're doing your own editing, and you're your own reporter. You're coming up with your own stories, and on top of that, I was in what they call a bureau, so probably 30 miles away from the main station, and so I was all by myself doing my thing. And I actually, I knew that I already wanted to be an investigative reporter. I didn't want to just do ribbon cuttings and rebuilding stories. There's a place for those and a time for those, but that's not where my heart was. I love to dig deeper, to make a difference, and to leave a lasting impact. And so I started doing investigations on the side, and ultimately won my first national award at just 21 years old, the Edward R. Murrow Award, which is a huge deal.
Wow.
So I was in market of 210 markets in the country, with Victoria, Texas being the smallest. Pascagoula, Biloxi was like 186, I believe. So super small station. And then to come out of nowhere and win a big national award was pretty incredible.
Well, tell us about that, Kel.
Yeah,
What was the story about?
So it was about former meth labs. People were cooking. It was kind of the beginning of the bad pun, but explosion of meth across. Sorry,
She's got it. She's
a pretty good pun.
Because when we
That was a pretty good pun.
When we were children, meth is like a relatively new thing. No, so I know what you mean by that. The explosion of it.
So people were really, really beginning to cook at home. And unfortunately, a lot of these places, would then be raided. And again, this was just after Hurricane Katrina. These homes, apartments, et cetera, would be raided. And then they'd take the chemicals out, haul off the criminals, and then no one was paying attention to what was happening with the homes. They were never being actually cleaned. And when meth is manufactured, it actually coats every single surface in the home, from the carpet to the walls, the paint, any sort of fabric, anything it can cling to, in the air ducts. And so no one was thinking about, well, we need to either be condemning these places or rehabilitating them properly. Mm-hmm. And so I came in, was knocking on people's doors saying, hey, did you know that this used to be a meth lab? And they had no idea. Wow. So people had lost their homes in Katrina and then were living in meth labs.
So this isn't something that the HOA or any type of real estate type, because if someone dies in a house, that has to be reported and has to be disclosed. But what you're saying is that there is no disclosure for it being a crack or meth house production facility, basically, is what it is. And that's still not the case?
Well, after my stories, we changed the law in Mississippi and then ultimately changed the laws across the country. So changed the laws to require disclosure and then also to require cleanup. And so in those cases, I was going in and I was physically testing the walls, testing the air ducts or the air vents, and then sending those samples off to a lab. And then I ultimately was able to also connect with a certified real hazmat cleaning service that then came in and for a couple of the families rehabilitated their homes for free. And then, we tested, of course, to make sure. Wow. And so, that rose to the level of a major national award.
Meth is the new asbestos.
Exactly, exactly.
No joke. So, quick question on some of that. How would you pick your stories? Like, how did you come across this meth stuff, and what piqued your interest on it, and why go down that road?
I am a very observant person, and so when I'm getting onto an elevator, I'm looking to see the inspection certificate. When I'm driving down the street, I'm looking to see if the fire hydrant has a service tag on it. I'm that kind of person.
Really?
She's a law abider.
And is that because that's the stuff that interests you personally, or do you know a good story when you see it?
A little of both. When I was a child, actually, and this may take us on a whole different detour, but my preacher and preacher's wife were murdered by what was ultimately found to be a serial killer. And so that
and where was this?
This was in Schulenburg. I lived in Schulenburg, and then this was in Weimar, the next small town over. Yeah. And so I really grew up with that extra inquisitive mind and being especially aware of my surroundings.
What's the story? Mm-hmm. No, why did your preacher's
happen?
wife? Yeah.
So he rode the railroads, and hopefully, maybe you guys will hear it first today, but hopefully I really aspire to be able to do some real digging on this case, like documentary style, podcast style, and tell that story because it's very compelling. But he even murdered people here in Houston, across the country.
Wow. Did he target them for being a preacher and preacher's wife, or just a coincidence?
No, but he did at some point start to say that he identified himself as some sort of angel. and that he was doing the Lord's work at some point. But I think that was kind of just grasping at
Angel
straws.
of death. Is he still alive?
No, he was sentenced to death in Texas, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Good on him.
Yeah,
So-
he is no longer around.
You mentioned in before that you were a one-man band while you
Yes.
were out. So you did not have a videographer. You did not have how did you just pick a spot and do it? I mean, was that a talk with you and a producer, like, hey, this is what I'm doing, or did they just give you free reign to go out and kind of make content and then, send it back into the station?
Also, imagine you get leads too, right?
Yes, you'd get some leads, and when you start doing solid stories, then people will feed you additional stories, and they know that they can trust you, and that if they're going to stick their neck out, that you'll stick your neck out too. But really, it was just sink or swim. I mean, I was out there all by myself trying to do my thing, and there were plenty of times that I was working on stories knowing that I was going to have to convince my bosses to hopefully run the story at some point.
That's a good segue into what me and Mikey want to kind of talk to more. Neither one of us are big fans of the mainstream media. Most of us, and I think you're in our same group here, we get our information mainly from our phone, right?
Sure.
I mean, we don't spend most of our time watching NBC, ABC, MSNBC, CNN, right? We get our information from a wide stream of networks, mainly through to be honest, our algorithms. Our phones know us, and so they send us the information that they know that we would like to see. It's just funny because we use that term a lot here. We're like, well, that wasn't in his algorithm as a joke. Mm-hmm. And so in terms of getting stories released, not released, requires convincing, not convincing. Obviously, these days, I think people are so more easily offended. And back in the day, you probably didn't have to have that level of cautiousness when running a story. And now, I guess, people's feelings matter more. Because anytime you run a story, I would say someone's going to have on often a negative impact from that story, right? Mm-hmm. Whether they were a criminal, not a criminal, convicted, accused of a crime, things like that. So tell us more about like the running of the stories and what you felt and what you thought.
So over the years, in all of the different places that I worked, certainly there was a changing dynamic from station to station. You always hoped that you would be working under a news director that was going to have your back. At the end of the day, the news director or the general manager are usually the ones who will allow a story to sink or swim. And so, I was very fortunate when I was in Memphis, Tennessee, when I was in Denver, Colorado, when I was in Austin, to be able to work with news directors who appreciated the art of an investigation. But even along the way, there were some times that they would say, this hits a little too close to home or too close to advertisers.
Right, that's what I was going to say. Too close to advertisers. There's like a list of people, probably like Nestle, for example. I was watching a documentary about the water and the pumping and all that stuff, and how, they sort of lobby the local networks to make sure they're on their side, and they're on the untouchable list, if you will.
They're the sacred cows.
Right.
So
right.
even in Houston, there was we'll say a garden center.
Okay. Oh, garden center. Like this. Okay.
That was on the untouchable list, even though I would have countless people when I was working in Houston send in complaints with photos and very credible evidence that they were buying bad plants from this place.
Mm-hmm.
The boss said that's a no-go.
Well, it's funny. We run into it in our world here.
Yeah.
So we advertise quite a bit for our business, and we're on radio and other channels of advertising. And how we run into it is we will ask to run radio ads on certain stations, and Mattress Mac, even though we are not in the same category, he is a residential furniture company, but he signs agreements to where people can't even say the word furniture without it being about Mattress Mac and Gallery Furniture. So I don't want to say who it is, but there's a very, very well-known radio host here in town that used to do our spots for us. And then he signed an exclusive agreement, and he can't even say the word furniture. Literally, isn't that what they told us, Scott? He can't even say the word on his show
That's
without saying gallery furniture. Like it's in a contract.
And jumping to sort of the influencer world for a moment, I've done campaigns where you have to be very specific during Super Bowl time to not say NFL, to not say Super Bowl. You can only refer to it as the big game.
The big game, yeah.
Why is that? Oh,
They have it, I guess, trademark,
copyright, yeah, registered, all of it. So I do have a question for you. Going back, and we'll jump around a little bit here. You were talking about your investigative stuff and kind of how you got to that certain point, and you were going down the road. At what point did you start to see, or did you start to feel like, hey, I'm doing stuff here, and the words that I want to say, they're not allowing me to say them? Or was it, I'm going to say them anyway, and whatever happens? When did that kind of start? When did you start to see? And I know not talking about an advertiser is different than talking about an opinion. Sure. Because I think not talking about an advertiser, I can understand not wanting to hurt the bottom line for a brand, right? Like a small news station or even a giant news station talking about someone that literally writes checks to them versus an opinion about a subject, because that's two totally different things, I think. When, like talking about Nestle dumping stuff into the water, that's a direct correlation to Nestle, right? But then you talk about, is candy good for you? That's an opinion piece, sure, that you don't have to talk about that. And I felt like, and this is just for me, I felt like the news pre-COVID, let's just put pre-COVID there, you could give your opinion on things like that. You might not be able to say Nestle or Hershey or whatever. You might not be able to say, Super Bowl or whatever. But you could say, I have an opinion about this that might be negative, and it would come through on TV. But it felt like to me, and maybe you can elaborate on this, that after kind of that COVID shift, you can't even have an opinion that difference or a difference of opinion, even if it's leaving out an advertiser. When did you see that change, or did you see that change, and how did that all take place in the end of your investigative journalist career? Sure.
So I left the business in, I believe, 2016 or 2017. 2017, I believe. And so I think that I was already seeing that decline of freedom of speech, essentially, and freedom of thought and freedom of topic. But I do believe that it has drastically ramped up in the time since COVID. I do agree with you that I've seen it. And we've seen so many people who are fabulous journalists leave the business as well, due in large part to the frustration of having their hands shackled. I was very fortunate to have worked at some stations, again, that really supported true investigative journalism. I did when I was in Denver, when I was in Memphis, and also when I was in Denver, did some incredible stories about sexual assault and rape kits not being tested, which ultimately led to a nationwide reform. We're talking like hundreds of thousands of rape kits being tested that otherwise were just sitting on the shelves. And that was just a backlog. Now we're talking about all of those cases actually be given a chance moving forward. And so I've been so blessed to be able to change laws like that. But it was a big, big fight. And so going up, for example, against the district attorney, against the police chief, when they would black out the station and refuse to even send them basic press releases, that's really hard for a news director to battle and say, like, okay, well, do I want to go all in on this investigation, or do I want my team to miss out on the daily news? And so you could kind of parlay that concept into maybe some of these more commercial examples that you're talking about with a potential advertiser, sure, or a big name company.
Sure.
In dealing with the district attorney, that situation that you talked about, how frustrating was that? Because I'm sure you weren't getting the information that you felt like the American people or your people watching your news station deserved, right?
It was beyond frustrating. Ultimately, though, it was a really, really good story because I mean, not only did we leave a very lasting impact, but we actually flipped the script on him using public records laws. He brought us in after months and months and months of trying to interview with him to understand why he was only accepting like 28% of sex assault cases that police would even bring to him to prosecute. He said, the only way I'll talk to you is if you come in to the office and we have this off-camera meeting. Okay. Well, when we get there, he has a camera set up that he's going to record for his own potential usage. And in that moment, I had to think, this should be a public record.
Yeah.
So I'm going to sit here and play his little game, and as soon as I get back to the office, I'm going to request this video, through public records laws, and get my interview done. And, there we go. So we were able to use, and he was speaking, of course, much more candidly than he probably would have if he would have had one of our cameras sitting in front of him.
Exactly.
But we used his own little tactic.
There we go.
So
I like
that was a
that.
good
I
one.
like that.
Keli, you posted something not too long ago where you teetered on the line of something that I always do, which is give my sort of very personal, truthful opinion about life and, politics and stuff like that. I'm not afraid to, let everyone know exactly how I feel. But again, I'm also not in a position like you, where you are an amazing influencer that, you almost like a local celebrity where it's a little harder for you to give us your raw, truthful opinion about everything. But what was that? Do you remember what it was not too long ago? It was something, and you even said it. You even prefaced it by saying, I know this might be a little blah, 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 but I'm going to say it anyway.
I
Do you
wonder,
remember?
was it maybe the documentary? No, I can't think of the documentary, but that was
Sound of Freedom?
No, not Sound of Freedom, but the one that was looking at the sort of gender.
Yes.
in America.
It was Matt Walsh's.
Yes.
What is a woman?
What is a
What
woman?
is a woman?
Yes,
Yeah,
what
is a woman?
yeah.
What a great
Well, we're all
documentary.
very familiar with that. Yeah.
What a great
Yeah,
documentary.
but that's see how I remembered it?
Yeah.
Because, for Keli, and I'm not putting words in your
Sure.
mouth, she cannot afford to like piss people off. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying we should piss people off, but sometimes we do it just by, at the end, I feel like these days everyone's sort of teeter-totting on that line of political correctness where you don't want to like be too aggressive with your thoughts. But that was one that I remembered. I was like, oh, that was cool. But anyway, I appreciated you saying that.
Thank you.
Because
Thank
I
you.
know you have a lot of fans, a lot of admirers out there, and I felt like that was great. I was like, okay, this is good. This is Keli just, letting everyone know how she feels about something that other people might consider to be a little taboo.
And that's the investigative journalist in me. Even though I do have the freedom to express my opinions now, and I'm not censored at all by the boss upstairs, I still have that commitment to fairness and tiptoe pretty close to the line, but sometimes I do cross over it, when I feel especially passionate about something. But at the end of the day, I think being an influencer is I'm sharing something with you. You can make your ultimate decision.
Exactly.
And I'm just going to tell you a little bit of how I feel, present the facts to you as I know them, and I look forward to discourse and discussion with you from there.
Absolutely. We don't like the idea of if something is a sensitive topic that the best way to deal with that is not to talk about it. I would say, people like Mike and myself, because we've had a lot of deep conversations here on the pod where we're on sort of that same wavelength of like, it's okay to talk about things. Like not everything has to be cringe. Ooh, like let's just avoid it altogether. So
I actually had someone during that whole discussion really engage quite a bit with me who is a teacher in a school and specifically deals with or works with children who are in transition or have transitioned, and so we had a lot of great exchanges back and forth about it, and I think that her mind was opened a little bit more in watching that and chatting with me, and my mind was certainly open more too.
that's awesome.
Yeah, so I think it's good stuff. It's better than not talking about it. When we don't talk about things, that's when things fester and become bigger issues then perhaps they should be, right?
That's in every aspect of life. I mean, it doesn't matter what you're doing in life. If you're not in constant communication with the people around you that you need to be in constant communication with, there are always going to be things that fall off the table that you just can't pick back up. And I think that the further and further you get away from that communication, the harder and harder it gets to get back. And so the free flow of communication is what I think is necessary, and not deterring from giving your opinion as long as it's coming from a truthful spot. I think the biggest problem is that people want to give their opinion, but they want people to like their opinion. Well, it doesn't matter. If you have an opinion and you say it truthfully and it's the true opinion of what you have, it doesn't matter if people like it or not. People should respect people's opinions and they should listen to them, because if you lived that person's life, you would probably have that same opinion. Yeah. And so I think if we can come from a place of, understanding that people are not the same, we are all different, we're all made in God's image, and all of us have our own unique fingerprint, not only on our hands, but on everything that we do and everything that we touch and how we view the world. You're going to view the world completely different than what I do and from what KK does, and we're going to all get along just great as long as it all comes from a truthful spot. And I think that's where it all starts. To get into the influencer stuff, because I think we have a lot of people that want to know how and why and when, and what has created such an explosion for you, especially over the last few years, to where you've seen just this rapid growth in what you're doing. What do you attribute that to, and how did you get into it? And did being on your own as an investigative journalist, having to produce your own spots and edit them and all that kind of stuff, did you see this happening? Is that why you did that? And were you getting ready for this, or was this just a happy coincidence that made you ready to be this, huge, larger than life influencer that you are?
Oh, well, thank you. I think if I think back to 10 years ago, quite frankly, I would have balked, and I did balk at the idea of an influencer or, someone.
It does have kind of a negative connotation sometimes, for sure.
Yeah, and it especially did in my journalist days. But when you really think about it, it's not that far of a stretch, because as an investigative journalist, I'm sharing something with you that I think that you should know about. And, I want you ultimately at the end of the day to see what I'm seeing, right? And experience what I'm experiencing, and make a decision based on the information that I'm telling you.
Yeah,
That's
I agree.
Does.
I think probably Tucker probably saw what you did and was like, I'm going to do what she did, and just went out on his own and is starting his own thing. It's such a big thing right now because there's so many of these giant journalists, and I mean people with millions upon millions of followers that are doing the exact same thing that you're doing, which is going out there, being your own boss, being your own person, finding the content that you want to create and putting it out there for the world. And there's people that absolutely enjoy it immensely. So when did you decide to do this? What are your aspirations with it? Where are you at now, and where do you want to go?
Sure. So I really started, I think I took my first photo of myself by myself with my tripod and remote about a month and a half after Brock was born. So that's my 5-year-old. And I'd already owned my domain for my website domain for maybe about 2 years before that, but I'd not actually put anything on it. And in fact, at that time, not only did I own KeliRabon.com, I owned SnoopMommyMom.com.
Snoop Mommy Mom.
And I still own it.
Oh, that's your new nickname for that.
Yeah. Actually, my dad calls me Snoop because of my investigative days. Nice. And I really love rap.
Oh,
so,
I like that.
Yeah. So I'm Snoop. So then I became Snoop Mommy Mom. But I actually didn't, I ended up just using my name because at that time, it seemed like people were kind of transitioning more from these monikers to their actual names.
Sure.
So anyway, I launched into that, and I needed to do something for myself. Like I was just a mom at that point for a couple of years. And that felt like nails on the chalkboard to me. Every time someone would say that, especially my TV people, it must be so nice being just a mom now. And so, I needed to do something creative for myself. And I thought, okay, I already love fashion, beauty, home, all of these things, family. Let me just share. And so I did that, and it just eventually started to grow slowly but surely. I always say that slow and steady wins the race. And I think so far, not that I've won the race by any stretch, but it has been a wonderful outlet for me. I have been able to touch so many people in a way that, no, it's not changing laws the way that I used to in my investigative days, but to be able to hear from other single moms who are going through the mess just like I went through the mess, and I'm very real and raw when I share things that I share. They appreciate that so much. They feel seen, they feel acknowledged, and I've heard from women who literally have said, I didn't feel like I had the strength to go on, but I knew that you had done it, and so I felt like I could do it too. It's very powerful.
That is real powerful, Keli. And I can see that. I've been following Keli for years now, and she does show her followers her real life. You know what I'm saying? This isn't just like, I'm just going to show you all the good stuff too.
The good, the bad, and the ugly,
like
right?
if she has a leak in her house, she'll show you. And then she'll tell you how she fixed it, right? She'll tell you who she used. It's actually really refreshing because it comes from a very authentic place, right? She's showing us, her life, and she's showing us, not just the get glammed up Barbie girls' night out thing. I mean, she has that too, but she also
Obviously.
has, but then she has all the, the homemade stuff too, which I think people appreciate because it resonates with, like she said, other women who are maybe going through things like she's gone through too.
For sure. And when I was going through my divorce, it was a super hard time for me, a very isolated time, a very challenging time where you can't see putting one foot in front of the other, but to really try to get up and show up for my followers, who I really consider more of my team and my friends, and it really helped me in a time that was very challenging. And so I love to be able to connect with people who are going through, other various hard times too.
Yeah, I like that because I think, as much as we put content out, in order to have maybe some help for others, a lot of times the person that helps the most is yourself. Mm-hmm. I've noticed that just in the little stuff that I've done. I'm not very active personally on social media. I'm extremely active with my business page on social media. But we do some weekly business tips and stuff like that. And it's funny when I'm researching these business tips, I'm like, I need to be doing this too, know? And so a lot of times the business tips are just what are things that I'm trying to accomplish in what I'm doing as well. And I'm like, well, if these are things that I as a business owner should be doing, maybe other business owners should be doing this. And maybe I could just tell them that this is a business tip and we'll both learn together as we move on. But it is funny how, putting something out for someone else, a lot of times the real person you're helping is yourself. And I think that's great because I think if it comes from that kind of spot to where you're like, look, I'm no better than anyone else. I'm just learning this shit too. And maybe we can all learn together. I think the realness of it will come through better than trying to be something that you're not, And I think I see a lot of that with influencers a lot of times. I've got some friends of mine that the only time they put anything on social media is when they're at a fancy restaurant, spending a lot of money and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, dude, 2 weeks ago you said you missed your car payment. So but the only post that you have is you with a Rolex on, going inside Mastro's. So, I think everyone understands that there's these two lives that everyone lives, the one that's out for the people to see and then the one that you actually live. And I think people like yourself that actually put both of those things out there, like, yeah, this is who I am on a Saturday night and this is who I am on a Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. when my water heater went out and my kids are screaming at me because they're taking cold baths. Like, I like both of those things because it makes the content that much more approachable for me, at least. Speaking of the influencer stuff, how do you and obviously if there's a question off topic that you just don't want to answer, we'll edit it out. It's not a big deal. So how do you turn what you're doing into money?
Mm-hmm. How do you monetize
How do
this
you
business?
monetize your business? And how did you learn how to do it? And what are some steps that other people can do that may have a 9-to-5 job that want to start doing this, that can slowly, maybe the first 1, 2, 3, how did you go from, obviously everyone starts at 0, right? When you get an Instagram account, and now you have 100,000 followers plus. And, how did you take that? And then where does the monetization come from?
So you pay attention to your audience first and foremost. You nurture those people who are loving on you already, and you continue to give them more of what they want. But for me, I think it's all about being authentic as you continue to build your audience. I remember when I first started trying to get brand deals, right? You start with getting some free product, okay? And then I did some things that were maybe for $5 or for $10. At that point, when I was married, my husband at the time said, "This is ridiculous. Why would you spend 30 minutes trying to take a photo for $10? But I knew in my head where I wanted to take this business, right? Because I could see that we're not flipping through magazines the way that we used to. Right. We're not even really watching commercials that much. You're taking that opportunity. You're probably fast forwarding through, right? So, but we are glued to our phones. And so I could tell that for me, I felt like I was influenced by influencers, and I wanted to use my influence that I knew that I had deep down. So you really just do it, and then you learn along the way. Thankfully, in Houston, there are a lot of other great creators that I network with, that I consider my friends and my colleagues and my competitors, oftentimes. And so, you work together, you share information about how to negotiate a deal and what you need to look for in a contract. I mean, we are our own agents, lawyers, accountants, creators, makeup artists, photographers, in so many cases. And that's just a small handful of all of the roles that you must play in this. And so, it's with experience. I definitely think that my investigative and TV days gave me somewhat of a leg up on the competition, because I know how to tell a story and I know what to look for when I'm reading a contract, and kind of know how to stand up for myself in a negotiation. But yeah, you're flexing all of those muscles every day.
That's great. Keli, you talked about being glued to the phone. I always tell everyone, I'm pretty much glued to my phone too, but I'm also 40 years old and I'm done with my school and I'm done with everything. So it's sort of like I'm allowed to be a little glued, if you know what I'm saying. But you always hear about people, the phone is the best thing that happened to us, but it could be the worst thing that happened to us because, you start getting too sort of wrapped into things. I'm sure sometimes you get feeling like maybe it's too much, right? Like to just put the phone down, right? I mean,
I do, especially when my kids are around, right? So when I have my time with my kids, I want to be as present as possible. Yeah. But that's a catch-22, because if I'm not on my phone and I'm not posting and I'm not responding, who else is, right? It's definitely a dicey subject, and for my kids to watch me, not only for me to have time away from my kids, but for my kids to be watching me like, oh, well, Mom, why is it okay for you to be on your phone all the time, but for us to not be on the iPad?
Right, exactly. That's great.
I mean, I don't see it going anywhere anytime soon, though.
What is your answer to them?
I'm working.
Yeah.
I'm
And
working.
do you think at that age they can understand the differences? Are you able to verbalize that in a way to where they understand, like, this is mom's work time, even though it looks like I'm just playing a game like you guys, and you're able to see that and at their ages, and you think that
Yes, for me to articulate that and for them to decipher the difference, no doubt. They watch my stories, they watch my the reels that I create or the photos that I create, and sometimes they're in them as well. And so they know when it's time to turn it on and when it's time to turn it off. It's been really interesting to see.
That's great.
Do they
And
like
for them to
like
appreciate-
seeing themselves in the reels
They
and stuff?
do,
get
they
excited?
do. In fact, I mean, they say this is how mama makes money. So
I like that.
So, I'm making, getting them a cut here and there. I need to actually work on, I think there's like some tax advantages and stuff I really need to explore.
Oh,
about
no, there
making
absolutely
your kids
is.
like official employees. So
Jay-Z and Beyonce made their daughter on the payroll, I think, when she was like a day old or
early on,
something.
because she like cried in
Yeah.
one song or something.
See, we're on the same algorithm. She
Yes.
saw the same reel. I saw.
Yes.
Hey, both my kids work here.
Yeah.
So I have a question about the influencer stuff. Being a small business owner, one of the things that we have looked at is utilizing influencers. From the small business standpoint, I can tell you that for the times that we have tried to find an influencer that we thought would work well with our company. Now we're a little bit of a different brand. We're not like a retail-oriented company where we're trying to find B2B clients where people moving into new office space or expanding their office, things like that, because that's what we sell as office furniture. It's been very tough for us to find an influencer that we felt had a large enough audience or the right message to go along with what we are trying to convey. What would be your opinion or your advice to small businesses that are looking to reach out to an influencer to utilize them? What type of communication between the influencer is normal? Is it just a DM? How do you reach out? Do you have an agent? Is there someone between you and that small business? And how, since you have these group of influencers that you meet with on a regular basis, I'm assuming, what have you seen from them? How businesses reach out to them, and what types of businesses are you seeing more of that you think is probably a good industry for that? Do you see what I'm saying?
Sure. So I think that there are a wide array of industries that can benefit from the use of influencers. I think you have to take on a multi-pronged approach, both DMing them and emailing them. You want to really understand who do I see as my customer, and then you need to take a look at their analytics to see if their followers, if their demographics also align with what you are looking for, right? If someone has 200,000 followers, but they don't have much of a local audience, and you're trying to target a local audience, then that's not perhaps going to do you a whole lot of good, unless you're hiring them to create content for you that then you will use on your platforms. So there's kind of become a couple of different avenues to take in this space: a content creator and an influencer, and those aren't necessarily one and the same. You could hire a content creator to make a lot of great content for you, and you could hire an influencer to, essentially create content and tap into that influencer's audience, if that makes sense.
No, completely understand. Yeah, I think the differencing two different types of individuals there, where I think I was just merging those two into one, is probably the best way to look at that, because you're absolutely right. We do get content. We do get people that ask us if they want to create content for us, and I always say no, we're doing our own in-house content. But an influencer, to me, is something that we are looking at very heavily over the next 3 to 6 months at that influencer base.
Holler at your girl.
Yeah, for sure. Because and I would love to talk to you further about outside of the podcast, just because I think that moving forward with how everything's working, the influencer space is going to become, in my mind, more of where we see real, actual, authentic marketing again. The way we used to see it, and the way we kind of still see it a little bit with the giant things, like Super Bowl and things like that. You have these giant media spins and things like that. And I think, to me, going on like a Fox News and running a 60-second ad that's going to cost, $250,000, that just doesn't make any sense in today's world now, especially with what the viewership is on a lot of those stations. I mean, you've got CNN who they're getting 25,000 eyeballs, basically. You're getting more on each one of your posts than CNN is in a whole day. And it's just, it's crazy to me. And I think that the influencer space, if done correctly with the right audience, like you said, and utilizing the analytics from them, I think you could get a whole lot more bang out of your buck than trying mass branding and mass marketing in today's world.
When you think back about, the last time that you made a decision by hiring a new company or making a significant purchase, right? It's probably not because of something that you saw in a magazine or something that you saw in one of those commercials randomly. It's probably a word of mouth decision or word of mouth referral, that how you initially heard about the company or what made you take that plunge. And so that's the beauty of the influencer space, is that by being authentic and sharing our lives on the daily, we create this rapport with our audience where they trust us. And so when we say, hey, this is what I'm drinking today, this is the best thing since, whatever, then people are going to give it a try.
And they know that she's not like full of shit either. Like she's not going to like promote something that she doesn't believe in. That's the other thing too. Well, that's how the trust is so important. So I get that.
Yeah, I've actually at times tried out products. I've agreed to do a campaign, tried out products, and they've not met my personal standards, and so then I just have to communicate. That's on me to communicate to the brand that, hey, I appreciate this. I'll send it back to you, but I can't put my seal of approval on it.
How many content or how many influencers do you think do that? How many? Because that would be me. I would look at that and say that's a good influencer, because that's not someone that just cares about the $2 bill that she's getting. That's someone that actually,
or the 2,000 or the 20,000.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like that's someone that actually cares that her audience buys something that's worth the money or has some type of value to it. How many of those people are out there, do you think?
Probably not that many, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I'm a diamond in the rough.
Yeah. Well, in lots of ways, obviously. I think that, the influencer space, to me, it's still in its infancy. I think that we've got some really big influencers out there, and we can all name, 10 or 12 of them off the top of our heads. But when you're talking about local, right? And for me, I feel that the local influencer, especially with what we like, which is small business, right? I'm passionate about small business because that's who I sell to. Those are my customers every single day. And so I'm passionate about it because I feel like these corporations are just ruining, they're ruining our country, honestly. I mean, and they're doing it only for profits. And just like we talked about in the beginning of this podcast, it's like, you've got these companies that are just off limits. They're just specifically off limits. You can't talk about them. You can't say anything that would even be construed as somewhat negative, because that checkbook is paying for that executive director's Porsche that's in the parking lot, or the producer's, brand new Mercedes-Benz, or the brand new house, or the vacation that they take. Hershey's, Nestle, those guys, those are the ones that are writing the checks. And small businesses, they get left out because I can't afford to spend $3.5 million on a Super Bowl ad. I can't do that. Steelcase can. That's a giant corporation. They're a multi-billion-dollar, worldwide corporation that we compete with every day. But for me, I do have access to local influencers. And I might even, as a small business, and maybe you tell me what your thoughts are, would you rather work with a global brand as an influencer, or do you see more benefit when you're working with a small business owner?
I love to work with small businesses. There's a lot less red tape. You know that you are making an impact in your community, and you know that you're a small business yourself, so you're able to connect on a different level. I think I charge lower rates to small businesses than I do to national or international businesses, of course, because even though I'm doing the same or perhaps more work, I understand, I get you, and I want to help you. And I know that there's probably a better chance for you to come back to me when you like the content that I've created, when you see that return on your initial investment versus, a very large company, large corporation that, you're a dime a dozen to them.
Yeah, for sure.
Tell us about Houston, Kelly. You see yourself staying here forever? What are your thoughts on Houston?
I will. I'll stay here.
You're gonna stay with me and Mike?
H-Town, baby.
Yes.
We're stuck.
We're stuck.
Well, I kind of am too. At least as long as my kids,
So I can tell you, we grew up here, since we were little kids, and I think you got to Houston.
I was born in Houston at Methodist, but I grew up in Schulenburg, just down the road, about 100 miles away.
Yeah.
And
just had my 20-year reunion this weekend.
I saw that. Mine was last year, so I got you by a year.
How long have you been in Houston?
Since 2015.
Okay, so relatively new, but long enough to be.
She was born here.
I mean, she's almost
Yeah.
She was just. It was just the hospital.
She just went away for a few months, for a few years, and then she just came
a minor
back.
sabbatical.
Now, so tell us your honest opinion. I mean, the good, bad, the ugly about Houston, and especially when it comes to this, your life in general. What do you think? Tell us what you think about Houston.
I think Houston is incredibly diverse, and I love that about it. I think we have an amazing food scene. I think that I get a little frustrated with the concert scene. As we were talking about my wannabe DJ self, I feel like we get skipped over for a lot of things.
It is true.
We do.
Yeah.
The problem is that here's my quick take on it. We don't have a great concert venue. That's the issue. New York, you've got Madison Square Garden and places like that. And then in California, you've got, tons of different places. Red Rocks is just an unbelievable place to go see a concert.
Love Red Rocks.
We don't have that type of facility. Now, I do have to say, if it wasn't 130 degrees outside, I would love there to be more concerts at the Woodlands, because I actually don't mind that outdoor, type of feel. I think that in certain instances it can be really, really good. The problem is that it's 100 degrees 90% of the time here, and you just can't do that outside. Yeah. But Toyota Center, the music sucks in Toyota Center. NRG, don't even try, because the reverberation in that place is just ridiculous. You can go see a concert, but you're not there for the actual concert. You're just there to be a fan, honestly, because the music is always pretty terrible.
You guys know what really bugs me about the concerts these days? Okay, if you want to get some content to show your friends that you went to a concert, that's cool. But why are you recording the whole thing? Why is your phone out the entire concert?
That's everything with everybody nowadays.
You see what I'm saying? It's just enjoy it just for a second. Yeah, I get it, right? Like you want to, and it's funny because, my friends, they kind of not poke at me, but they're like, oh, because they know that if there's like a wedding or something, I'm the content guy. And I'm proud of my content. I think my content's pretty good, like compared to like other guys in my genre, if you will. Okay. I have the best content for a 40-year-old interventional cardiologist.
There you go. There you go. Get specific, baby. The more specific you are, the top of the food chain you go.
So, it's like one of those things, but I'm not doing the whole thing, and that the concert, I don't know, that's the only part that really bugs me. And when people stand up in front of you and it's like, are we just going to stand up the whole time?
Maybe they're trying to upload it to YouTube so they can make some money. I don't know.
Oh, man.
Yeah, there's always that. Unfortunately, there are lots of people out there just trying to make a quick buck, no matter what they do. And, sometimes they can be a little bit... where were we at the other day? And these two Asian ladies, we were sitting down somewhere for like 25 minutes. And I'm not joking, like half of the whole lunch. They were outside just trying to get a clip of something going on. And I thought to myself, I was like, man, y'all have a lot more, y'all are going at it. Y'all aren't going to quit until you get it. And determination was high that day. They were committed. Yeah. Committed. I don't know if they ended up getting it or not. I would like to have seen that at the end.
When it comes to your editing and stuff, are you kind of OCD about it?
Yeah, I am.
You can tell it shows so well. Your
you.
Content is extremely crisp and clear, and it's laid out extremely well. So whatever you're doing, you can tell that you're very, very diligent about it.
Perhaps to a fault. Sometimes it takes me a little longer, but I always think that if I'm putting something out there, and this was the same way that I was in my journalist days, is that first doesn't mean best. And so I'd rather be super intentional about everything that I post, because once it's up, it lasts. You want it to last, and you want to be proud of what you've put out there.
It's our digital footprint.
It is funny though, because there are two sides to that coin. You hear, and I don't know if you follow him or not, you hear the Gary V's of the world and things like that, and they say just post, just go all the time, just always be doing it. Doesn't really matter what it looks like, because you never know which one's going to go viral, right? It's just get as much out there as possible. And then you have the opposite of that, which is people like you and some other people that I know. I know another buddy of mine who's got a couple million followers, and he's extremely careful about editing and making sure that everything's perfect, the music's lined up perfectly, all the lighting's good, everything's just done correctly. And I feel like both can be done, and done to a way to where you can get results. But I think that it has to be whoever you are as a person. Like, seeing you and how you look, your page directly reflects exactly who I thought you probably were. Extremely put together, very, organized, very on time, very, what's the right word I'm looking for? Very direct and
precise.
And precise. Yeah. And where, if you look at our page, it's not like that at all.
Well, there's beauty in both of those
and I think
scenarios,
so too. And I think that's what's great about social media, is because you do it the way you think is best for you, and as long as it's authentic, that's the key. The authenticness of everything is what pushes people forward. Well, we're almost at that time. It's been an hour. It just went by just like that. We try to keep them to about an hour, just so we don't have people, watching us for 2.5 hours sitting here talking about nothing.
That's when we have round two.
Yeah, no, exactly. We would love to have you back. I would love to talk a little bit more, especially about small businesses and their goal and relationship with influencers. And maybe we can even bring a couple of other influencers in that and just get more specific, especially about contracts and things like that, because these are things that I don't think any small business owner really knows. I don't know what should be in a contract, what shouldn't be in a contract, what influencers look for when they're trying to make a determination on which small business that they want to promote and which ones they don't want to promote, which ones are easier to go with and things like that. And as a small business owner, it would be nice for me to learn what other influencers are looking for and how we can help, put our brand in a position to where influencers will want to come on board with us, because I think that's a whole key in and of itself. So I would love to have a part 2 with you whenever you're available. It's been great. Next time we'll make sure that we're having some air conditioning problems, guys. And it might be because it's 135 degrees outside, but it's about 78 in here right now, if you haven't noticed, and I'm melting.
I knew I was in the hot seat. I just didn't know it was going to be this hot.
But man, we really appreciate you stopping by. Let's put up her Instagram, and what other channels are you on? Can you just list them real quick, or whatever you've got?
Sure, I'm on Facebook as well at Keli Rabon. But yeah, everybody knows me on Instagram as Keller. It's really Keli Rabon, but Kelir.
Kelir, and she's got the little blue check mark next to it, obviously. But if you go to her Instagram page, shoot her a follow. Do you have YouTube channel or anything like that as well?
I need to get on that.
I think you should, especially with how beautiful your home is and everything else that I've seen inside, all of your pictures and stuff. I think the videography would be absolutely incredible. We can't wait to have you back on. Anything you want to leave us with? Last words for yourself?
Goodness. Well, thank you for having me, and I can't wait till the next time. Let's tear it up more.
I definitely want to get into the small business stuff, because I think that there is a huge market segment out there of you guys that are small business owners that would love to hear a little bit more about influencers and content creation, and how all of those contracts look, what they look for in small businesses, and then what small businesses might look for in influencers as well. So we appreciate the time, everybody. Dr. KK, love you, buddy. Love you too, Scotty boy, we'll see you again. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
That went by quick.
Yeah, it's quick.